I am Dr. Dana Och, and I am the Director of Undergraduate Studies for Film and Media Studies, mostly in terms of critical track, but all of it basically. And I have been working at Pitt since, 2006. And my dissertation was on Irish film. And since that time, I've really specifically concentrated on Irish film and horror film and television. And the last couple of years at Pitt, in terms of teaching, I teach a lot of the genre courses, genre, politics, gender, disability, and I have been living basically in television analysis for a few years and teaching that every term because it's a really popular course and a lot of people don't know much about television. I always say it's kind of crazy at Pitt because we have so many courses, like even just out of English, we offer about 40 courses per term between composition and film. And one of them is on television. One.
And that's television analysis?
Yeah, television analysis is our only Ing Film or Film and Media Studies program. It's our only television course right now. So yeah, it's and now we have broadcast, but that's different than critical studies television courses. So it's kind of like the joke of whenever we try and do all of world film history in one term, that I'm trying to do all of the history of television in one term.
Right. Yeah. So how do you organize that? Like, how do you pick and choose? How do you do that?
So whenever I used to teach this course, I used to only do genres. And so I would come in and I would do the cop show, the sitcom, the art horror shows, soap opera. And over the past few years, since the production major really has taken off at Pitt, I've felt a need for an understanding of industry. So I've been pushing industry studies courses as something to be developed. And television is one of the areas that we're doing that in. So over the first few weeks of television, I try and do a lot, and it's a lot of work in television, I admit it. But it's like you try and do an overview of how television works as an industry, but then each week doing either different genres or different moments. But now that broadcast is really struggling and shifting, that SVODs or subscription video on demand platforms, we have to talk so much about them. And the thing is that people at this point come in and we know so much about television, but then everyone says that they don't have a television or they don't watch television, right?
Right.
Which is different than whenever I started teaching this course back, I think I probably taught it for the first time in like 2002. And at that point, students would say, I don't watch television because television is low culture and I watch film. Now, at this point, people aren't coming in and saying that as much. I might have one or two students who say, I don't watch television. I think it's dumb. But most people now come in and they watch television, they know television, but they don't know broadcast television. They don't understand kind of how, they'll be like, I've never watched a rerun. I don't understand what syndication is. But then I say, you just watched how many seasons of Friends or The Office. So you are in fact watching reruns and you do in fact understand what syndication is. But Netflix has really confused the matter of that different stations have different branding, that audience demographics have to work very differently in television than film. So right now, what I've been concentrating on, and one of my big sort of my things that I fight for in television, is that people always want to come in and say, television is film. Television is not cinema. And so I try and slow roll that out patiently. And then the other thing is that in the moment that people started saying television is cinematic, and television is worthwhile, and television is peak, and television's even better than film for a lot of people.
Mm.
They also trace it to the exact moment that people tried to masculinize television. So it's at the exact moment that people start saying, oh, this is no longer a feminine media, but now it's Breaking Bad. Now it's The Sopranos. Now it's David Milch. Now it's David Simon. That it's in the moment that people think it got good is also that they start really focusing on white men. And I push back against that a ton, because if you watch Sopranos or Breaking Bad, while they might promote themselves as very masculine, those are soap operas. Just like wrestling is a soap opera. If once you're in serialization, you're in soap opera. So I defend soap operas nonstop.
Good, as you should.
I mean,
like,
it's kind of like if you gender, I do a lot of melodrama. I think melodrama is like one of my favorite forms. So, yeah.
Interesting. And do you think there are certain genres that are maybe better as TV, or maybe work better on TV as opposed to films, like the melodrama or something like that?
Well, I love the melodrama in film as well, but the melodrama on television is much more mainstreamed. It like in film, melodrama gets kind of denigrated as being a weepy, as a woman's film, as a chick flick. But if you watch television, melodrama is everywhere. The family melodrama, the romantic melodrama, the melodrama between two female friends whose friendship is breaking up, which is one of my favorites. The melodrama with mothers and their daughters and teens, right? All of this is all over television, but we don't denigrate it and throw it away in the same way that we do for in cinema. So melodrama is everywhere in cinema and in film, but I think in television, while people might say that they don't like it there, they do, right? They just want to call it something else.
So why do you think that? Like, why do you think that is? Like, that people are more willing to accept it in television as opposed to like film?
Because so whenever we start thinking about what's the differences between film and television, right? In film, you're watching something for 90 minutes to 2 hours, or in contemporary, whenever they start hitting 2 hours and 45 minutes, 3 hours, I'm like, I just want to go to the bathroom. Or when can I take a nap in the movie, which I have done multiple times. Like if I go to an action movie, I take naps. Like I'm like, oh wait, there's a really long motorcycle chase, time to go to sleep. So yeah, famously, I like to go to sleep during movies. But on television, you have minimum 10 hours, right? You have 10 hours if you have a show that's been running for 10 seasons and it's on the traditional model of 24 episodes over 10 seasons, you have so many hours. And action's not going to fill up all of that. For one, action's too expensive, right? So just like in a movie, even whenever you have something that has a bunch of spectacle and a bunch of action, you still have to have some character development, but it's rushed and it's very often focused on one character. Even if you're in something like the Avengers, you can still think only a couple of the Avengers really get any depth given to them. Actually, do any of them get any depth given to them? Unless they're in a standalone movie, right?
Right.
But that's why something like WandaVision worked so well. It took two minor characters who were basically there just to like trigger some melodrama, and then gave them 10 hours of television. Or no, that was a half-hour show, so 5 hours of television. It felt like a 60-minute show, but it wasn't.
Because it had 10 minutes of credits at the end.
Yeah, those credits were long. I never paid attention. I have to admit. The actual length of television, it gives you the chance to develop more emotional connections in between many, many more characters. And that's all that melodrama is, right? It's emotional connections between characters. And that's what whether it's Grey's Anatomy, whether it's Breaking Bad, right? Breaking Bad, what people really cared about was the relationship between Walter White and Jesse and the betrayal in that relationship, right? And the reason it worked is because we had slow rolled it for so many seasons. And if you just have 90 minutes, you can't get that history, that knowledge. You can't feel the depth of betrayal in the same way that you can if you have 5, 6 seasons of television. So just the nature of the amount of time that we spend with the characters allows for that deeper connection. But then this is like why I get so into it, because, you know, television studies is whenever I start getting excited, right? It came out of feminist media studies. And of course, it's not a surprise, right? Television was looked down upon. Of course it was, because it was defined as for women. What kept women company all day while they were stay-at-home moms, right? And the whole nature of television was based around a woman consumer. That television, so movies are very, they prioritize vision over sound generally. Now, of course, you can challenge me on that and I would accept that. But for the most part, whenever people think about film, you know, if you take film analysis, you get 1 week on sound and you get 14 weeks on image, right? So in television's also actually an audio-based medium. It's closer for a long time to radio than it was to film. And that's because the assumption with television is you are not sitting and watching it closely. Now, right now they're saying, oh, with the pandemic, we have this amazing rise of shows that you don't pay attention to and they just play in the background. And I'm like, what have y'all been doing for your whole lives? You're telling me you've actually watched television the whole time that it's on? No, right? Every paper I have ever graded of yours, Claire, I have graded while watching Pretty Little Liars.
Oh my God. I feel betrayed. Oh my God.
Or The Bachelor, right? I always have the television on 24/7. It's like my thing. And yes. But I listen to it. I don't watch it because I'm doing something else. I'm talking to my friends on my phone. I'm grading, I'm prepping, I'm cooking dinner. I'm doing all these different things, but I'm not watching, I'm listening to television. And that nature of distracted viewing was originated for women consumers who were doing other things, right? So television has had this huge history of being a feminized medium. Even if you think of the ads, right? Most of the ads are either cars, and then everything else is like selling you diapers, selling you baby food, selling you appliances, selling you all these kinds of feminine home products. Now, is that sexist? Yes. Like I'm of course I'm dealing with binary notions of gender that have dominated in terms of television, imagining its audience. But with that, film like had that male main character, the male consumer focus. Television imagined women and allowed for all kinds of different stories. So some of our earliest queer characters and some of our earliest AIDS storylines were on daytime soap operas. And it's actually really important that it's there, because how do you change the prevailing status quo, more traditional conservative view of gender and sexuality and disease? You do it through bringing characters onto the television, and then the television is a domestic medium. It's intimate. We watch it at home. A lot of times in our pajamas without our bras on, right? While we're eating, we're sitting in bed watching, even now, while you might be doing it on your computer, right? This still was, you're watching, we'll just say, we'll go use Friends as the typical example. You're watching Friends on your computer, laying in bed, you know, not performing your identity in any way. Like you can be more yourself while you're at home watching television than you ever are when you're out in a movie theater.